Welcome to Psych Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Jessica Rabin, a licensed clinical psychologist. If you are a mental health professional, student in the social science field, or just interested in psychology and mental health, this podcast is for you. Although topics discussed on this podcast are similar to therapy, Psych Talk is not a replacement for therapy and is for educational and entertainment purposes only. So let's dive into today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to Psych Talk, and thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. Today I have a very special guest with me, Dr. Jeremy Thompson, who is a medical practitioner. So Dr. Jeremy, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
So before we jump into our discussion, can you introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, what you do, and anything else you want to share?
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, Jeremy Thompson is my name. I'm a family doctor. I'm not quite sure if it's a similar setup over in America as it is here, but we have a lot of family doctors. They're your first port of call if you've got a problem, any problem, psychological or medical, mainly medical. So I've worked in Sydney, Australia. I've worked in other parts of Australia and overseas. I'm a family practitioner, so people of all ages come in to see me. I've been working for quite a long time, as you could probably guess. And so sort of see people from all walks of life. You see the rich and famous and the down and out, but mostly just ordinary, everyday people that you have in the community. And I think is an interesting point, because you might have real specialists. Could be psychologists like yourself, or psychiatrists and various specialists. They tend to sort of see a finite group of people that often get referred to them. Whereas for me, people just walk in the door. They don't even know really what their issue or problem is. So I'm that first point. Yeah. So as a family GP, you have this, down to earth view of everyday, ordinary people, and the line that when they're troubled by the various issues and things like that, some of them have got real problems and need referrals, but most situations we as family doctors can manage and look after ourselves. And so probably some doctors just get fascinated by one sort of area, like might be kidneys, and they might be a kidney specialist, or hearts or cancer specialist or whatever. I've always been a bit of like to dabble in all sorts of things. And at the end of the day, I realize I'm mainly just interested in people. So all the different illnesses and things, yes, I know about all of them and quite good at diagnosing problems. But really, it's the people that I'm very interested in. So it's their lives, what makes them tick, what makes them happy. And one of the things, and I was interested in mental health, so I, got into cognitive behavioral therapy, and I practiced hypnosis for a number of years. And all this sort of thing has definitely been a main part of what's in the back of my mind when people come in to see me, not just their current ailment, but the bigger picture of their life. And I was kind of fascinated, well, one, by how much mental health issues and stresses and strains people are under in the modern day world. And it's quite pervasive. There's a cloud of stress when people come in with a medical problem. It's very hard to tell if stress and anxiety is the main source of the symptoms, or whether there's actually a medical thing. Might be something wrong with their heart, or a genuine, gastrointestinal problem, or maybe it's all just stress. So you do get good at sort of sifting out the psychological things from the organic medical illnesses. But the thing that sort of struck me a bit was that probably most of the people that come to a family doctor, they actually pretty much got their lives together. They, pretty much they're in control of their life. If a problem arises, mostly they can sort it out themselves. Occasionally they need to go and see a doctor. But even if they come in, it's not too hard to understand what's the issue, and you can sort of fix it up, and then you don't see them for another couple of years. But aside from that, there's quite a biggish population of people that seem to need more help than others, and they're constantly stressed and struggling. They have more relationship issues, have more anxiety, they get more bodily symptoms and problems, and they get a lot more referrals to various medical specialists and so forth. And so after a number of years, I sort of wondered, how is it that some people can really sort of seem to have their lives under control, and these other group, it doesn't matter, how many psychologists they see or people, doctors or whatever, they never sort of seem to get their lives together. And that's when I thought, well, what is the main vital point? And I think the main thing is this sense of identity, that the people that seem to be in control of their lives, actually, they seem to know who they are and they feel good about who they are. So when things go wrong, they can always think, well, what do I want to do to fix this? And they've got that sense of self that they can strongly come from. Whereas the other group of people seem to be a bit more mixed up and confused. And in fact, they're harder to get to know. Some of these people, I might have seen them hundreds of times, but I still don't really feel like I know them as a person, because they're kind of got this mixed up sense of self, which I call the mixed bag concept.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just sort of show you on my little diagram here
Yeah, of
what I
course.
mean by that? So look, you probably do it yourself when you get a new client. You say, well, tell me about yourself. Who are you, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
What do you like, and so forth. And so I'll ask people those questions, and they'll say, yeah, look, deep down, I feel like I'm a good person. I mean well. I want to have a good life. I'm quite caring. I love my kids and my family. And, at school, I was good at these subjects and not so good at those ones. So people recognize that they've got positive qualities.
Mm-hmm.
They've got good emotions. You could put some happy faces and love hearts in there. Um, they do recognize that they have certain talents and abilities and natural inclinations towards things.
Mm-hmm.
But then they'll also say, but I've got these negative aspects too. Like I often feel like a real loser, and I feel a bit unworthy. And I went through a lot of trauma in my life. My parents were fighting all the time. And so, in the mix of it all, their sense of self is actually this mixed up picture, which is a fairly random collection of good and bad points. And that's how they kind of go through their life. And it's not an easy way to live your life, to have a mixed up sense of self where you haven't really figured out the real you in all of that, because you're very dependent on what the world throws at you. So if things are going well, like your job's going well, you've got enough money, your relationships are good, and you've got some friends, and you've got some hobbies going well, you start to feel good, and all the pluses in you seem to magnify, and the senses of weakness or unworthiness seem to diminish, and so you feel you're quite good, and you can go on a real high and feel very confident. But then your partner drops you, and you get sacked at work, and suddenly there's a whole lot of pressure on you. You feel like a real loser. Then all the minuses seem to get bigger, and all your positive strengths and qualities seem to shrink away. And so your perspective of yourself is, oh gosh, I'm 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 depressed. I'm a loser. I'm a no hoper. And so people kind of go through their lives with these ups and downs. Every time something goes wrong, they lose it, and their emotional state deteriorates. And people talk about resilience a lot these days, and I think it's hard to have resilience if you've got this mixed up sense of self. And I'll just go on from this, because the other thing is that people who have a mixed up way of seeing themselves, that's how they kind of think about other people as well. So, they I'll just draw another person next door there. Yeah, so any of us, if in our relationships with people, normally what happens is you see something, a characteristic in that other person that you like. You kind of connect with it. Maybe it connects with one of your own, and so you have some positive interactions between these things that you have in common. But in your relationships, it doesn't take long before the other person does something that actually rubs you up the wrong way. It might be the
Yeah.
way they speak or some habits that they've got. Maybe they're really messy or something. And you happen to be a bit of a cleanliness freak yourself, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so then, you know, the way you feel about that person is suddenly gets skewed. And in some people, this mixed up way of seeing people is quite a confused way of living your life. So to make it easier, they'll see one point, it might be one negative point, and they'll judge the whole person on the
Mm-hmm.
basis of that one negative. And in some people, the negatives seem to fuse together. And I don't know if it's happened to you, but sometimes there are people that you suddenly get this overwhelming feeling, what a horrible, disgusting, awful person that person is. And and once you start feeling that negative way about a person, it's very hard to see the positives in there. They just you
Mm-hmm.
can't see them at all. So it's interesting for me as a family doctor. I mean, if someone like you came in for a first consultation, I mean, I'd be asking at one stage, hey, what about family history of illnesses? What about
Mm-hmm.
your mum and your dad? And it's amazing how often people say, oh, my mother, well, no, we don't see her anymore. She's an absolute rat bag. She's just a crazy witch. And no, we don't have anything to do with her. Or it might
Mm-hmm.
be, oh, no, my dad, no, he's an absolute, you know, some
Mm-hmm.
kind of swear word or something like that. And, you know, he's just a horrible man. No, we don't see him. And and I think it's a shame, but something like this has happened, and so that's how it can be. Sometimes people will see that way about you too. I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but sometimes you might inadvertently do something that upsets someone, or you don't give them what they want, and they'll latch onto that, and they think you're being really mean and horrible, and then
Mm-hmm.
they can't sort of see any rational thing that, hey, hang on a tick, I'm actually trying to help you, but I'm sorry if I've upset you, but you know, forget it, I don't want to see you again. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that this mixed up way of thinking about yourself or other people creates a lot of problems in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I was talking about resilience. If you know, we all make mistakes and things go pear-shaped and go wrong at times. And if someone points out, hey, look what you've done this, to someone who feels like a mixed bag, when someone points out one of those negatives, it's like a dagger stuck in your
Mm-hmm.
chest because that negative feels like it's all part of who you are.
Yeah.
Um, and so for resilience, it's no good to see yourself that way. Now, the point of all of this is there a better way of seeing yourself? And yes, there is. And these people that seem to be happier and more in control of their lives, they're still dealing with the same adversities that everyone else is, but their perspective is what makes life easier. And so there, and that's what this diagram is for here, that here's a person here, um, and I'm glad that you've had children because I hope you'll agree with me that when they're born into the world, they're so pure and beautiful. Now,
Mm-hmm.
babies will cry if they're in pain or they're hungry or they're tired. But if nothing's wrong, it's amazing how content and how happy they
Mm-hmm.
are. And they start moving around, crawling. They've got this inner drive to touch things, feel things, and they've got this positive energy. And you can kind of see that they're all a little bit different, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Some are a bit more athletic than others. Some are real thinkers. Some are quick. Some are slowish. You know, they're all a bit different. But in my view, as that when a baby's born into the world, they're full of various talents and things that you hope they're going to find and discover as they go through their life. They don't know what they're going to be good at or what the world holds for them as they move ahead. But they start off with these positives. But unfortunately, they can't just go on blissfully doing whatever they want in life
Yeah.
because there are rules in the family. They'll get into a cupboard and make a mess and get into trouble. And although you don't want to yell at them, sometimes you do. and they'll go to school, and they might do something wrong or get into trouble, and they can't just sort of be themselves. Unfortunately, they do need to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and how they get spoken to, and how people manage them are important factors, because that's where I think a lot of these negatives come from. You might
Mm-hmm.
tell off a kid because they got into the bin and made a mess of it. You're just aware of hygiene and just trying to be sensible, but
Mm-hmm.
they might pick it up the wrong way and think, "Oh, Mum's always yelling at me. Doesn't matter what I do; it's just not good enough. I'm unworthy, and she loves the older brother or sister more than she loves me." And so we pick up these negatives. That they're not something that I believe is hardwired into our DNA. They're acquired, and they come into people's lives. And as a psychologist yourself, you know about all the traumas and all the things that
Mm-hmm.
can happen to people, and they can create really deeply embedded, ingrained negative forces.
Yeah.
And no matter how ingrained they might be, in my view, they're still not part of your genetics. You weren't really born with them, they're acquired. So it's better to see them as out here somewhere. And these people that seem to have easier lives and are happier and more successful, they don't think they're perfect as people at all. They know they've got faults and things wrong with them, but it's where they position those faults in their
Mm-hmm.
sense of identity that makes all the difference. So I think this is a much better way for people to think about themselves, and it's a more accurate way to think about yourselves. Have you got any questions about that? I know
Yeah,
it's simplistic, but
but it makes sense because, as a psychologist, I work with so many individuals that have truly like taken on exactly what you were saying, like those negative qualities that typically come from other people around them, things people
mm,
say, or maybe the behaviors of other people that we up on as children and make interpretations. And then
mm,
we tell ourselves the story of like, well, I'm unlovable or not worthy or things
mm,
like that and ingrain them into our identity. But the way you explained it makes a lot of sense. It's like we have these innate qualities that are positive. And yes, bad things may happen or we have done negative things, but it doesn't mean that we are a bad person. And if you're able to separate the two, like you did in your diagram, and navigate life that way versus having, I
yeah,
guess you kept saying the ups and downs. I was also thinking just kind of like a pendulum of fluctuation of like,
mm.
if my mood is good today, then I'm thinking better of myself. If something bad happens tomorrow or something upsets me, and then I take this on, like that has to be exhausting too.
Well, that's right. And you would know people, and I know people, and have plenty of patients, and they're always seem to be going through these trials and tribulations.
Hmm.
And actually, what's going on in their lives is not a hell of a lot different to what's happening in other people's lives, but they always seem to having these ups and downs. And it's the other truth of it that you point out is that bad things happen to people, but often they're not meant to be bad things. So, like I
Hmm.
mentioned, some people they've got this, they don't want to talk to their mother or father. I've never come across a mother or father who doesn't love their children, and what they really want is the best thing for their children. But unfortunately, they get caught up in uh, this kind of dysfunctional interactions with their kids, and so they have these bad things. It's so unnecessary. That's the point about it. Um, and as far as the way you relate to people, I think this model is a lot better. So um, if two people can have this um, better perspective, I call this like positive centered psychology,
Hmm.
um, where actually ideally what you want in any relationship is you want to have these positive connections going. And the reality is that we can all behave badly, act badly, think badly. Yeah, you mentioned that.
Hmm.
There's there's no bad people, but good. We're all good people, but good people can do bad things. In
Hmm.
fact, often we do. We regret
Yep.
it, but unfortunately we do. What happens is sometimes someone else will do something that we don't like, we see some negative uh, behavior from them. Perhaps they are mean to us, or they unthinkingly do something that injures us, and we're upset by it. There's a real tendency for us to be stirred up by that, and we want to react back.
Mm-hmm.
And when two people are having a fight over something, that's what happens. And whereas 5 minutes before they were getting on quite well and enjoying each other's company, now they think, oh, you're a horrible person and you're having this terrible fight. So I sometimes notice this myself. Could be someone says something and you get an uncomfortable feeling. You want to kind of react back. But I stop and think, well, hang on a tick. What would the real me want to do? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The real me is actually a kind of caring person that wants to help. I don't like doing nasty things to people. So I need to connect with their good side and find out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I might say, hey, look, just 5 minutes ago we were getting on pretty well, and now something's happened, and I think there's a bit of tension between the two of us. What do you think the issue is, or is there something that's upsetting you, or is there something I've done that you don't like? Because you want to kind of focus on the issue or the problem or whatever it is, and not personalize the whole
Mm-hmm.
thing. So then it might be something I've done, or it might be something they've done, or maybe it's some separate issue to do with something completely different, like how we manage the dog or some, any other issue. But the thing is, you want to keep these positive connections going. And sometimes just having the perspective there, as I was saying before, I think a bit like a football coach, you might sort of show a plan for the players or what you're trying to do in this football game. It may not actually work out, but at least you got a plan of what you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
do, and you can keep working on it and getting better and ironing out little things that go wrong. So yeah, um, this is the perspective which I think is good. And for example, if you had something like a football team, so this works for families and for teams and organisations. Um, Probably most of us have been in a sporting team of one kind where everyone's been negative and bitchy and putting each other down, and there's kind of a really unpleasant, horrible feeling, and everyone plays worse, so the whole thing kind of implodes. And then sometimes they'll get a new coach for the next year. The team was at the bottom of the rung, and the
Mm-hmm.
new coach has got this personal way of bringing out the best in people and saying, no, no, hang on. Yes, he's dropped the ball, but he's good at this sort of thing. So we've got to help him build up so his strengths can help our team. And we've got to work around it to make it easier so he doesn't drop the ball. So you can imagine if you've got a whole group of people, this sort of way of doing it works well. Whereas if you've got a team of, you know, mixed bags
Mixed bag.
all fighting each other and getting caught up there, it's probably not going to work out. And
Mm-hmm.
I think in my experience in different schools that I've been in when I was younger, or my kids have been through, sometimes there'll be a year in the school where all the kids in the school are very supportive and positive, and sometimes this negative bitchy thing starts happening, and it gets very pervasive and just seems to take over, and the whole thing becomes dysfunctional. So that's what the models are for, to try and give people a different way of looking at it. And really, everything else flows on from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. And yeah, I know you made the comment like it's pretty simplistic, but it makes a lot of sense. And even the example that you just gave a few moments ago about, if you're getting along with a person and then something shifts because somebody does
Mm.
something to upset you, even the shift of like it's a behavior that they did that I'm upset with, but like at the core, we get along versus that mixed bag identity where you really personalize the behavior as a person's innate characteristic. Like you said, it's going to make you interact with
Yeah,
people
that's
and
right.
the
It's
world very
yeah,
differently.
yeah. From that mixed bag perspective, it's hard not to get caught up in it all, and
Hmm.
and it's hard to see a way out of it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
um, that's
So
it.
we obviously just talked a lot about the mixed bag identity.
Mm.
Um, you have another phrase or term. I don't know if you coined it, but of the diagnosis generation. Um, and
Yeah.
so what would you, because talking about identity, right? So why, like, what is the diagnosis generation
Oh,
and like
look,
why?
hey, look, this is kind of actually, it's not a huge issue for me. I mean, I do one thing I've noticed, I'm sure you have too, that I mean, I'll have patients come in and they tell me they've got these three
Hmm.
labels, these three diagnoses, and because people, well, back in my day, no one really even went to psychologists or anything. You know, you had your issues, you were bullied, and there was teasing, and you'd had anxiety. I had a terrible stutter, you know. I never saw anyone, but I sort of managed to get over it myself. But I mean, these days, very different. So when people are having issues and problems, they just go online, they look it all
Hmm.
up, and they come up with all these labels and diagnoses. Um, I don't have a problem with people trying to understand these things, but the problem is with some of these sort of negatives that they their identity becomes based around it. I had
Hmm.
a young school age boy in, and to be honest, he was kind of annoying me a bit because he's like nearly finished school, and I said, look, hey, in another year you're going to be out of school, you're going to be an
Hmm.
adult. You can't hide behind these labels and diagnoses. You're going to have to get on with your life. I don't really think there was too much really wrong with him. And he said, well, how can I do that? Because I've got these illnesses. They're part of who I am.
Hmm.
And so I found that a bit disappointing, you know, that if it's going to go that way, it's just going to be a lot harder. There'll be a lot more work for people like yourself
Hmm.
trying to manage this. But another thing that I sometimes say to people if I refer them to a psychologist, which I do all the time because you need extra help above and
Hmm.
beyond what one person can do, like myself. But I say, look, when you see the psychologist, just be careful you don't end up focusing on the problems too much because the problems are things that do need addressing and worked out, but they're only half of it. The other half is the real you, who you
Hmm.
are, and the direction that you want to go in. Because even if all these problems get solved, what next? What do you do then?
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
got to come back to your true self and what it wants to do. And so it's important that you know, keep a balance in the way you work on it. Because sometimes people going to psychologists or doctors and whatever, they get this focus on these illnesses and labels, and they actually feel worse, and
Hmm.
their sense of self goes down. I was going
Hmm.
to say one little point just before I was thinking. Cognitive behavioral therapy and all these therapy techniques, they're all important and they're great, and I believe everyone needs to know about it. But you know, when you're doing cognitive behavioral therapy, if I was working on someone like that and they've got this little negative problem, they tend to catastrophize or black and white
Hmm.
thinking or whatever. So you're trying to sort of work on that and you rub that one out after several weeks, you know, and yeah, okay, they've got that one in balance. But then there's some other little negatives. So then you're trying to get rid of that. And so people are going to counseling for years and they are getting better, you know, they're gradually rubbing it out. But there's even though these minuses taken out of the system, they've still got those issues there.
Hmm.
So for me, I kind of don't worry about that too much now because I think often when you start focusing on your true self and just forget all about all the problems for a while, get more in touch with who you are and what you want to do, and go ahead and get involved in the things you want to do.
Hmm.
So to be happy, I think one, you need to know your true self, know
Hmm.
who you really are, who you're born to be, type of thing. And then the second part is you need to be doing the things in life that feel right for you. Once you try and do those things, it can be anxiety provoking. And if you've got an anxiety problem, you do need to deal with it. That's for sure. You've got to
Hmm.
face up to it. But once you get your life going positively, the funny thing is that the minuses often sort of shrink away um, without you having to even do anything about it. And I've thought about this a bit. So I've done some coaching myself with kids, and if they're playing some kind of sport, and sometimes you see one kid's not very good at passing the ball or something. If you say, hey, look, you're not very good at passing that ball, we've got to get you passing that ball better, they usually just get worse.
Yeah.
If you actually say to them, hey, look, you're a really good player and you're good the way you handle the ball, and let's see how you pass it. Let's see if we can get that going better. And if you turn it into a positive thing, it's amazing how they get better. And you've hardly even addressed the negative. So it's quite interesting. But so that's my kind of perspective, which is a little different to some of the other therapies. It's not some people, if you take this positive approach, think, well, you can't just deny the fact that life is difficult and people have these uh, difficult emotions like anger and hatred or extreme anxiety or whatever. But I'm not doing that at all. It's just where you place them that's the important part of it, and that helps you deal with it. And even say with anxiety, I mean, as you know, there are many good aspects to anxiety. Makes you be careful and think ahead and look for things that might go wrong, and makes people more conscientious. They're much better workers with a bit of anxiety there. So the right amount of anxiety is a plus.
Yeah.
But a dysfunctional part that stops you from doing things that deep down you know are right for you, well, that's, in my mind, is a negative. And so you want to watch it and make your decisions in life need to come from your true self. And you don't want your decisions coming from this negative side, which in fact shouldn't be there at all, but it's only got in there inadvertently in your upbringing. And it's a big mistake for people to make. And you see it a lot that they make many decisions from this dysfunctional negative side. And as I said, if two people are having a big fight there, it's crazy. Sometimes you might have a married couple, and when they first met each other, they're beautifully in love, and love is another emotional state. One thing that the love chemicals seem to do is they seem to blind you to a person's negatives. So I'm sure you've had friends, and maybe yourself, you're beautifully in love with this person, and you think how fantastic they are, and they think how fantastic you are, and there's no more euphoric sensation than that. And then you see them 5 years later, oh, they're getting divorced. And you say, but hang on, you were saying how wonderful they were. Oh, no, they're an absolute ratbag. So then when the love chemicals get reversed, then the people, they can't see the positives. So you get these two fighting like cat and dog and going through some horrible legal thing. And I often say to people in those situations, hang on a second, this lady or this man is the mother or father of your children, and you need to support them, you need to help them, even though you've got some differences there. And it's going ahead as life goes on, and your life will hopefully be a long one. It's really important that you keep in touch with the good sides of your partner. There might be some aspects of them that you don't like or you disagree with. But it's really important that you keep those positive connections going.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd throw that little idea in.
No, I love that. And circling back to like therapy and what you say when you refer people of, don't just focus on your problems. I love that approach because, like you said, hopefully with therapy, a lot of those negatives will go away. And if you don't know who your true self is, if you don't know your strengths, if you don't know your good qualities, it's going to be a lot harder for you to work through or let go of those negative self-concept and bringing it back to, the diagnosis generation or people really identifying with diagnoses, which I agree with you. I think it's important to, for somebody to kind of search out and figure out what's going on. But if one's identity is a diagnosis, I've seen this in therapy, it's a lot harder to work through things because they're scared of letting go of whatever that label is because they don't know who they are without it. And that's kind of
Yeah,
what I heard you saying, like if you're only focusing on the problems or the negatives and
yeah,
not ever focusing on your true self, it's
Yeah,
going to
that's
be
right.
really hard to move
I
forward.
mean, the thing is, you've probably got a fair level of your own self-confidence and self-belief, so you probably think of yourself more along these lines. That, and I do myself as well. Not that I've always done
Mm-hmm.
that in my life, but generally I feel like I'm okay. I mean well and so forth. But a lot of people just don't though, and
Absolutely.
and you can you we see them as these wonderful people full of talents and abilities, and we can't see the negative thinking that's in their heads, but they certainly feel it a lot, and so yeah, they have this kind of mixed up, uncomfortable feeling there. So for me, before um, one thing I think, say, with counselling and having various therapies and things, step one actually, first of all, is to ascertain. Well, hang on, who's the real you?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, people often have an issue and a problem, might be an anxiety problem or anything, a communication problem, and they want to work on that, which is fair enough. But before you can really do it, I think you need to establish this a bit about, hang on, who's the real you?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, there's a couple of ways that you look at it. One actually is in the present, just with this having a mindful awareness of how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I just generally use the happy scale. 10 out of 10 is as happy as you could ever imagine being. 0, you're so low, life's not worth living.
Mm-hmm.
And where would you say you're at the moment? And I guess, sometimes people amaze you. They go, oh, I'm 2 out of 10. And you think, oh, wow, I didn't realize you were that low. But having an awareness of how you feel. If you suddenly feel you're an 8 out of 10, you might be doing something or talking to some people, and suddenly you get a surge of positive energy. I think that's really important to latch onto and think, gee,
Mm-hmm.
something's right for me here. There's something that I'm doing that feels right for me. What is it? And you want to work out what that vital ingredient is. So
Mm-hmm.
hang on, let me just wipe that. I When the people get a surge of positive energy, I get them trying to identify what is it that's making you feel good. You might be doing something, and as each time that happens, you can log these thoughts and ideas in a positive way. If you feel low, suddenly you go down to a 4 out of 10, you were 8. Well, something's wrong. Usually there's a little negative dialogue in your head. Oh, you're no good, you're unworthy, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there you go, you're a loser, or something like that. So if people go down, I get them to write what that little sentence is that's in their head. And funnily enough, a lot of people have got 4 or 5 sentences, same ones, and they say them over and over again, and they've been doing it for a long time. When you go through someone's background and ask them about their life and their childhood and growing up, they'll tell you a lot of these negative things. And it's from there that these sentences come from.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I always ask people, okay, you say your parents were really hard on you and you had all these awful times. Were there any times where they were actually nice to you and you felt quite good? And most of the time, if people scratch their heads hard enough, they'll think, yeah, actually, Dad was really horrible, but a couple of times he took us camping, and he was actually quite good fun,
Mm-hmm.
And I go, and so what did that bring out in anything in you? And go, yeah, yeah, it made me sort of really enjoy that and think he was okay. Or mum was kind of really busy and seemed to be cranky a lot, but she would sit down and read us stories, and she was really nice when I was sick a couple of times. So in going through a child or a person's sort of full history, and often you know yourself that people just want to relay all the bad things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll hear all of that, but I also want to hear about the good things, because at the end of the day, there was a small child growing up and somehow surviving all of that. What did you learn about yourself, or going through
Mm-hmm.
school? What were the subjects that you were interested in, or gave you a sense of excitement? So you're trying to sort of separate this out in the past history and work it out in your present life.
Mm-hmm.
And then it sort of flows on into the way you look towards your future. What do I want to do with my life?
Mm-hmm.
And people often say, what do you want to do with your life? Well, if you don't have a good sense of self or have an understanding of your background that's accurate and not sort of confused and biased in a negative way, it's impossible to really know the direction forward. So
Mm-hmm.
all these things kind of go together,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess that's what the book's all about: how you can look all of that, put it into practice, and yeah.
Yeah. No, and I'm so glad that you mentioned your book because I was gonna ask you about that. So your book came out in January of this year, right? So understand your true identity, discover the real you, and enjoy healthier relationships. And so it's all about identity. It sounds like the things we've talked about are what are covered in the book. Can I ask, like, what inspired you to write it?
Yeah, there were a couple of things. I mean, I'd made those observations of people, and I
Mm-hmm.
was always wondering, gee, what is it that you need to be happy and so forth? And
Yeah.
I mean, my background, my parents used to fight all the time. I didn't like it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think anyone likes that kind of stuff when they've been exposed to it, and you kind of want peace for everybody. When I
Mm-hmm.
first wrote the book, my idea for a title was Peace in Yourself, Peace in Your Relationships, Peace in the World.
Okay.
And I still think that's what we should all be kind of working for, spreading a positive way of dealing with things. And people want that. The trouble is, they don't
Mm-hmm.
really know how to achieve it. And in my own small way, I'm trying to work towards that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other part of what inspired me to write it was I was doing hypnosis. So
Okay.
I'm not sure. Have you ever done hypnosis with people or
No, I'm not.
yourself?
No, I'm not trained in hypnosis, but I do
No.
have colleagues that are.
Yeah, they do
So.
it. Yeah. Well, it's
Mhm.
interesting when you do it. It's hard work actually when you do it. But people get ingrained negative sort of beliefs or bad
Mhm.
habits. You know, it could just be an overeating or a smoking or whatever, and it's kind of stuck in their subconscious. Normally connected with things that have happened at an
Mhm.
emotionally important time in their life. So if you go and have hypnosis yourself, it's scary because you're kind of giving your mind over to this hypnotherapist. And do they really know you? What are they going to do? Maybe
Mhm.
they'll stuff it up and make it worse. You know, you have to be confident that the hypnotherapist knows you and knows what they're doing. So for me to hear about this person's life and what they wanted to
Mhm.
get rid of and how it's connected to this and that, you started to get to understand the person really quite well and who their true self was and separate
Mhm.
out these negative aspects. And with the hypnosis, that's what we try and shift out and get rid of. And it would often work out really well. And people would
Awesome.
be stunned how they'd, you know, just feel really good about themselves and good as a person and these funny bad habits they've miraculously got rid of. So and that sort of tied in with this idea of just as a general philosophy in your life,
Mhm.
you know, try and figure out who you are. And it's an ongoing journey. You discover
Mhm.
different aspects of yourself that you didn't realize, little hidden talents that you had. So it's an ongoing journey. And you're just trying to be the best person you can be. You're not trying to be someone who you're not. You're just trying to be who you are
Mhm.
and uh, and try to avoid that shift back onto that unhelpful, dysfunctional side.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, no, it
yeah,
does, and it brought up for me because obviously, like you've seen this pattern with a lot of your patient. Do you call them patients or clients, or I don't know if you have a
yeah, I call
what
them patients, but
patients?
I
Okay,
never feel like I don't feel like I own them.
yeah, but like with all the work you've done and the patterns you've seen, like, why do you think people struggle so much with their identity and like knowing who their true self is? Like, I know we've talked about,
Yeah,
these messages and stuff, but you clearly have seen like certain groups of people and like, have you found a theme of as to why people struggle so much with knowing who they truly are?
yeah. I mean, I think there's all those background family
Hmm.
traumas and things that are a factor, and they've probably been around for centuries. You know that people can go through that. You can imagine if a kid actually gets brought up in a really nice family where
Yeah.
the parents they get on well and they don't fight too much, and yes, there are emotions in the house, but they sort of manage to rationally work around it, and they help people, and the kids try various things. I remember a mother said to me once, "What's the most important thing when bringing up children?" And I said, "Well, the most important thing is that by the time they finish school, that they have a good sense of who they are and what they want to do. If they have a good sense of self, they'll be able to, deal with all the difficult things life throws at them and work out the rest for themselves, you know."
Hmm.
Um, so, I think that's the important thing to work through on it there
Yeah.
and work out this true self. And then, well, we talked about this identity thing. So I think with the modern kids in high school these days, they're so image conscious to
Hmm.
a crazy level. And I don't think that's healthy. In my
Hmm.
mind, you should be looking outwards at the world, not looking inwards. Unless something's wrong, you've got a funny pain and you need to figure out what it is. But you really want your mind looking outwards. And I think a lot of these young people, they're so worried about their image, they start looking inwards a lot.
Hmm.
Someone on Facebook put an old photo of my high school year, and maybe there was 40 of us, and I looked at it all, and I've seen lots of photos of the young kids coming through high school these days. The girls all look beautiful. I don't know how they all manage to look so beautiful, and the guys are all buffed up and muscly, and they
Hmm.
look pretty cool as well. Anyway, this old photo of us, we all look so ugly, and there's tall, skinny ones and short, fat ones, and shirts hanging out, and um, none of the girls look terribly good looking, and the hair's all ruffled and all over the place. And
Hmm.
so I put in a comment that, gee, we were all pretty ugly back in those days, but at least we were individuals.
Hmm.
And I reckon that's true, that you could kind of be who you are a lot more
Hmm.
back in my day. Yeah, yeah, there was a lot of bullying and fighting and stuff like that, but um, people were individuals then, and we weren't trying that hard to fit in
Hmm.
with a particular mold. And I'm sure this social media, I reckon it's a massive problem,
Yeah.
and makes it hard. So all those kids that struggle with high school is such a struggle.
Hmm.
And I often say to say kids, 16-year-olds, hey, look, you've just got 2 years to get through. Once you're through school, life's going to get a lot easier. You can be who you are. You don't have to fit in with these pressures, so
Hmm.
forth. So just hang in there, and once you're out the other side, it'll be a lot better.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot going on these days. Yeah.
Hmm. No, and I love that you highlighted like the pressure that
Mm,
teenagers nowadays are under the influence of social media. I absolutely agree with that. Even something you brought up earlier when I asked about like just diagnosis as identities, information is at everybody's fingertips. So you
mm,
can, I mean, how many of us have, well, maybe not you because you're a GP, have WebMD'd our symptoms? It's like like this hurt. And then you're like, oh, okay, I clearly have this, whether it's mental health, physical health
mm.
condition. And we have access to all this information, but it's not always accurate.
No,
And we're not all physicians or mental health practitioners or
yeah,
whatever it is. So I definitely think that plays a role because, like, I don't know. I always say, even though we have all the information at our fingertips, like too much information is not necessarily a good thing. And that probably
no.
plays into identity as well.
Yeah, and there's quite a lot of chaos in people's lives. They're confused and they're trying to figure it all out. So if they can just get one or two little labels that kind of answer the problem, say,
Mm-hmm.
well, there you go. This is who I am. Well, in a
Yeah.
simplistic way, that sort of solves the chaos,
Yeah.
but not very
But not
accurately.
really.
And
No.
yeah, I know. I think everyone just needs to chill out on it.
Yeah. No, but that
Um,
makes a lot of sense. Like I mean, as humans, I think we do that. We like search for quick answers, whether it be
yeah,
labels or things like that
yeah.
to calm. And I know we're going back to just kind of using like diagnoses or something, but we're like, oh,
Mm,
this fits. So this explains all these things about me. And then we do feel calmer because we're like, okay, I have an answer. But as you said, if that's not correct or if that becomes your whole identity, even we could use not labels, but even like trauma, like you were saying, if
mm,
your whole identity is related to your trauma or family system, like, yes, it might be an explanation for the chaos in your life. And what does that do
yeah,
for
that's
you in
right.
the long
And
run?
yeah, and humans, we do kind of like to label things. I mean, we've
Hmm.
been doing it forever. You look, we've labeled every living creature on the planet.
Yeah.
And so, and it's like you're a psychologist, a podcaster psychologist. People will say, well, and say, oh, and they feel like they know everything about you.
Hmm.
And, or I might be a doctor. I mean, but people don't know. Oh, actually, I'm quite creative. I write
Hmm.
songs. I play in a band.
Wow.
I play sport. I do this. And there are so many aspects to people's
Hmm.
personalities. People are very, very complex, and
Hmm.
maybe it's too complex, and so just one or two features, and people judge you on the basis of that. You hope they judge you on a couple of your good features. If they judge
Hmm.
you on a couple of your bad, not so good ones, they're not going to like you too much. So, yeah, I think maybe if there's a message here, keep an open mind. People are
Hmm.
good at heart.
Yeah.
Um, if you're not if you're not feeling that or sensing that, you kind of need to look a little bit further and try and understand. Why are you doing that? What's the background to it? And it's amazing when, even though people do crazy things or things that seem really bad, and you get the background, hey, how did that happen that you made
Hmm.
that decision? You can start to understand how it all happened and it all makes sense. It doesn't forgive the behavior, but it helps you sort of understand it. And that's the
Hmm.
only way forward towards making sure it doesn't happen again.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
anyway,
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Jeremy, I
thank you.
have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I know we are wrapping up and getting to the end. So as we are wrapping up, we've talked a lot about a lot of different things, the mixed bag identity. You briefly mentioned positive centered psychology. You provided listeners some like interventions, tips that you give to your patients. But as we're wrapping up, is there anything I haven't asked you about that you want to touch on? Any last thoughts, tips? Where I know that's an open-ended question, but things
Um,
that, you want to leave listeners with.
uh, the world can be a lot better place. And I
Hmm.
think in our families, they can be a lot better. I think we don't know people half as much as we think we do. I think parents don't know their children very well.
Hmm.
You think you do, but actually you don't really. Your kids don't know you very well. So I think it's important that everyone has a positive approach to it, but listen more. Ask
Hmm.
sort of gentle questions to try and understand what's going on. And I think we need more of this sort of approach rather than a punitive approach when people
Hmm.
do things that we don't like or we think are wrong. Try and help people. I always, as a doctor, I try and help people.
Yeah.
So, and often patients come in, they want me to do things and I'll say, oh, I don't really think that's a good idea because of this and this. And they go, yeah, look, you're probably right, but do you mind just doing it? And I go, you know what? I want to help you. So if this is going to help you, yes, I'll do it.
Hmm.
Um, because, when you're down and out, it's quite a horrible experience if you need some help. Most
Hmm.
of your life, you don't actually ask for too much help. And if you do ask for it and people say no, oh, no, that's not right. I'm not going to help you, it really leaves you at the end. So I always just try and help people, and I think, I think we should do that. So this
Hmm.
peace in yourself, peace in your relationships, peace in the world. I think that's what we all need to work towards, and
Hmm.
maybe leave it with that.
Yeah, no, I love
Yeah.
that so much. I love that. The last question I ask all my guests, where can people connect with you? Where can people buy your book? And anything else you want to share with regard to, I don't know, things you're doing, places to connect, anything like that.
Yeah. Well, Understand Your True Identity, Dr. Jeremy Thompson. That's the book, and there is a website, understandyourtrueidentity.com, and I think just drjeremythompson.com should be able to find me. I know in America you can buy that book fairly easily, I think, Amazon and whatever.
Okay.
So, yeah, I guess all the things that I've felt that are important as far as having a happy, healthy life are kind of in the book. There's
Awesome.
some good chapters on relationships and broken relationships and how to manage them, and I think that's quite colourful and interesting. I've got a chapter on the secret of happiness, and it's very realistic and true, and I think it's got the answers to happiness. There's a lot of stuff on communication, um, and yeah, so there's kind of something for everybody in there, but definitely anyone who sort of feels life could be better, I reckon if they read it, they'll get something out of it. I hope
Awesome.
so. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I will definitely share your book and websites in the show notes of this episode. And yeah,
Mm.
just thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge and insight. It was a
Mm.
very, I was going to say positive, but then I realized that was
Mm.
like cliche. But I mean, it was a
Um,
positive, uplifting conversation. And I feel like we do need more of
mm.
that because I mean, come from a United States perspective, but we are very polarized in many ways and quick to point out negative things. And I agree with you. I think we need to be more open and focus
Yeah.
on the positive, not ignoring or diminishing that bad things happen, but you know,
Yeah.
connect when it comes to human connectedness and connection with ourselves, focus on
Yeah.
what are our
And
strengths.
it's funny, isn't it? Like political stuff and whatever. Yeah, that one little thing can really divide people. Well, we're all human beings. We all want the best. We all want to raise our kids, and we all
Hmm.
want a nice world. And it is a beautiful world. Yeah,
Hmm.
there's some bad things that are happening here and there, um, but mainly it's a beautiful world, and people generally are beautiful. Even those people that you kind of feel aren't beautiful at the moment,
Hmm.
and we're all human beings. We're all 99.9% the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's much better to take that, everyone get on together and deal with the differences and try and understand the backgrounds to them.
Hmm.
So there's
Yeah.
it's interesting when you hear about that, I think. When
Yeah.
someone has got what to you seems like a crazy wrong idea, yeah, it's interesting to hear where did that come from, and the whole
Hmm.
story. And then it really starts to make sense and it doesn't seem quite so crazy. So,
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah. Thanks for
absolutely.
your time. You're very
Of
easy to
course.
talk to, so you're doing a good job.
Well, thank you so much. And yes, thank you for your time. And it was
Yeah.
wonderful connecting. And once again, thank you for sharing all your knowledge and insights. And I really appreciated this conversation.
Thanks, Jessica. Well done.
And thank you, the listeners, for joining for today's episode of Psych Talk. And I
Mm.
will catch you in the next episode. Bye.
See you later.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Psych Talk. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend. Don't forget to follow me on all socials at Jessica Lee, PhD, and the podcast at Psych Talk Podcast on Instagram.